So I was about to say, let's go. But then I saw this phenomenal tweet just a few days ago. And I don't like to endorse in any way any kind of racial thinking, especially when it comes to people who are putatively my people. But someone did say on Twitter the other day that let's fucking go is Allah Akbar for white people. I mean, nailed, correct. And I will never use that term ever again. And I will always sneer at my fellow white people when they do say, let's fucking go. It's the adding the fucking in the middle. It gives it that like super masculine militant imperative. Let's go can just sort of be like a friendly, jolly kind of thing. But let's fucking go is jihad for white people, usually involving football games, some sport race car races, too. But no, it's right. So
Did you
anyway,
see the clip of the guy lighting himself on fire and doing a backflip off a bridge?
no, but let me guess, was he white?
He was white, and I'm pretty sure he said, "Let's fucking go." I need to watch
No
the tape.
kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, hey man, some of the stereotypes about our people, Michael Weimer, are true.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no chance a black guy would do that.
Yeah.
What
Although,
black guy would do that? Or I think about that Viking dude. I think he's in somewhere in Scandinavia who does those huge like cliff dives into like little tiny pools in an iceberg. I'm like, yeah, only not just a white person, but a Nordic, the white man par excellence that you said 100 years ago in race science classes. He's a Nordic dude. Only a super white person from like Norway, descendant of the Vikings, would jump off a cliff into a little icy pool hundreds of feet below. It's just true. It's just true. We tend to our people, to further racialize white people. I mean, our people as a race do tend to greatly dramatize things that others would just as soon walk away from. White people tend to take certain things very, very seriously, like what's going on in other parts of the world, as if it's our responsibility, like, oh God, there's children being killed somewhere. Oh, well, that's on me. I'm going to cry. And then I'm going to go make sure I do everything to tell everybody that that's not okay. And that's white people, meaning modern Christian, secular, evangelical white people. But yeah, anyway, so yeah. So there's your race lessons for today. If anyone has any questions, just unregistered media. I don't know, what is it? Race questions at unregisteredmedia.com. And we'll be happy to answer those promptly. We do have a holiday season backlog, but we'll get to your queries as soon as we can. Lots of questions come in about race and, what people should think about it. And who belongs to what race is always a big one.
Well, when it comes to race, we've talked a lot about the blacks and we've talked a lot about the Jews, but we haven't talked about the relationship between the blacks and the Jews.
Ooh, here we go. Okay. Yeah. Now, which angle do you want to take? Because this is a big one. I believe it's funny that you say that. This is no bullshit. My ex-wife's doctoral thesis advisor, who was also like close to me, is Jack Salzman. And he's he's the kind of expert on Black-Jewish relations in America. He's written many, many books on this. He's co-authored books with like Cornel West and stuff. So I've been around this shit. Well, so it all begins, when the Jews come over and open shop in Harlem and the Lower East Side. And some people who lived in those places, Black people, were like, cool, there's now a store that like sells us things, A few, not all, but a few were like, yo, why are the prices the way they are? They should be lower. And it's because the fucking Jews selling us this shit. And was a fairly common thing in the so-called Black community and always has been. Not a majority opinion. Let's be clear about that, but a healthy minority opinion for sure. Ask Jewish storekeepers from that time, and I've known many. They'll tell you, they faced a lot of heat simply for being Jewish, but really it was really a class antagonism. directed through race at them. And then there was the issue of the second thing that Jews did once they accumulated capital from selling trinkets in the stores and on their push carts. Once they accumulated a little capital, what they do? They bought real estate. And where they buy it? They bought it in what became known as the inner city, places like the Lower East Side and Harlem, which then became entirely black. The Jews left, moved to the suburbs, but kept their housing stock and became rental landlords. And of course, no one likes landlords. And when the Jews are overrepresented among landlords in a place like New York City, where all the people who are renting are different color, yes, what you would expect exactly happened over the last 100 years. There's been a lot of black anti-Semitism in places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, anywhere that this dynamic took place. And that still goes on. And yes, I do think that accounts for some, sure, I'll say it, some black anti-Zionism too. Not all by any means. But yeah, there is a sort of a reflexive anything associated with Jews among certain parts of what we call the black communities. And the nationalist political parts certainly I think are universally pretty anti-Semitic. But just on the street, the Jewish shopkeeper trope stays alive, even though now they haven't seen a Jewish shopkeeper in 50 years. But there's still some of that. And then the other thing people underestimate, and you've seen this a little bit, and I know you want to segue to Kanye West as soon as you can, and this will help you do that. Who have been the success stories from black ghettos, basically? The success stories have been entertainers, including athletes. Who do athletes and big entertainers have working for them? Agents and managers. In Hollywood and in sports. Guess who those people have tended to be overwhelmingly? Yes, indeed. Many black people are dependent, essentially, not dependent, but somewhat dependent at least, on Jewish agents to make their bags. And now that has caused some ambivalence. And you see it in some rap lyrics, and you've seen it in Kanye repeatedly, and maybe that's kind of the conflict he's acting out. He's like, oh shit, on the one hand, our people have been oppressed by these Jewish shopkeepers and these landlords. There's something wrong with these Jewish people, not to mention the fact that they're oppressing our brown-skinned brothers in Palestine. Something wrong with these Jews. On the other hand, damn, they have helped a brother out repeatedly by really funneling more money into black neighborhoods than ever in the history of the world. Think about the number of extremely poor, uneducated black people in this country who are now multimillionaires, largely as a result of Jews being really good business people for them, working for them, not being racist against black people from the hood like a lot of WASPs have been. By the way, that's one of the reasons, probably the reason, that Jews dominate that industry. Is that back in the day, like during segregation and then shortly afterward, when black athletes suddenly were becoming valuable financially, a lot of the WASP agents and managers at the time were like, I'm not dealing with the N-words. Thank you very much. And this is true, documented. It was just, they would say it. They were explicit about it. Jews never had those compunctions about blacks because they were often treated like blacks. They lived in the same neighborhoods as blacks, as I said earlier, when they first got here. And for many other reasons, being the sort of identified as with slavery, also Jews themselves, certainly in the 19th century when they first got here, that's what they were primarily thought of as a stateless ex-slave people, just like, black people in America. So Jewish agents and managers stepped up and were like, yeah, I'd be happy to do business with you. Raheem from the hood, who's a great wide receiver prospect. And all the entertainers. Oprah Winfrey has had how many Jewish managers and agents? All of them, I think, pretty much have dealt with a Jew at some point in a very positive way. So there's a lot of ambivalence between the two groups. So there's your answer.
I wanted to get into how. Oh, they're talking about it in the chat a little bit. Martyr made has a very comprehensive history of this. And our friend Daryl Cooper, he has a 6-part essay series about this particular relationship. And in there, and some other people have talked about this, the famous essay of Norman Podhoretz. What's it called? I think it's called My Negro Problem and Ours.
My Negro Problem, comma, and Ours.
Yeah.
Meaning our nation's problem. Yeah.
Which basically traces the neoconservative movement to a young 12-year-old Norman Podhoretz getting beat up by some black teenagers.
Well, I do. I mean, that's I mean, I draw it even more starkly, that connection, than anybody else I've ever seen. And I could be wrong. I mean, it's, you know, I can't prove it. I haven't seen, I'd like to ask Podhoretz if he means, he's still alive. And his son's alive, but his son is a raving moron. So I wouldn't even bother with him. John, who blocked me a long time ago simply because of my associations. But anyway, I draw the connection between that essay, which he wrote, I think in 1963, I want to say early 60s, and the Iraq War, which he essentially was, you know, one of the principal authors of, as being the godfather of the neocon movement. I mean, the essay, it's a beauty, and I love Norman Podhoretz, and I really do, because he's a really beautiful writer. He's one of the last living of the so-called New York Jews, the New York Jewish writers, or the New York intellectuals of the 40s and 50s. So yeah, everyone should go read it. It's online. It's on commentary.com. It's amazing. And what he talks about is being a Jewish kid in Brooklyn in the 1940s, I think it was 41 even. I think it was the year that the war started here, but before Pearl Harbor, but I think it was in 41. And he's living in a neighborhood that is now has recently become has had an influx of black migrants in. So there's a lot of black residents of this neighborhood suddenly, which previously, when Norman was born in the 20s, I guess, was all Jewish, like 100% Jewish. And to this day, it's still a major Jewish neighborhood, to some degree. I mean, there's still, but they're huge. But then there were just huge synagogues and Hebrew schools, and there was a very famous Hebrew orphanage in this neighborhood that he grew up in. But in the 30s and 40s, black families started moving in because public housing projects were built there. So it was essentially state engineered, by the way. Anyway, and then he tells the story of playing baseball with his buddies at the schoolyard one day when a bunch of black kids show up and promptly kick their ass, essentially beat them up, terrorize them, force them off the playground. These were all like baseball fanatics. If you know anything about like Jews in Brooklyn in the 1940s, this was like the Brooklyn Dodgers were their religion. So to take this away from those kids was like, you know, one of the worst things you could do. They didn't have access to this, you know, playing field that they'd played ball on for years, etc. But they're terrorized. And he tells another story about a kid just walking up to him, a black kid walking up to him and hitting him in the head with a baseball bat, which, by the way, happened to me when I was a kid about that age in Berkeley. I could tell some stories about random acts of terror meted out against me and my brother, both by black kids. It was a thing. I'm talking about in the 70s. But so Norman, this is one of the reasons I love him, is that he went through that. He's one of the few people who went through that just like I did. For different reasons he went through it, but also some similar reasons. But anyway, so he then is the reason I love this man, Norman Podhoretz, the founder of neoconservatism, and I really do, is that he is so honest. And especially in this essay, he just says at one point, I hated them with every fiber of my being. Black, and he meant black people. And he sort of says, you know, I think he says later in the essay, like, you know, since then I've learned that black people have certain talents that I think are admirable and even thrilling. And he talks about like their abilities to dance and do singing and stuff. But he says, like, I will still have an abiding belief that they hate us and therefore we should always hate them. It's It is, this is early 1960s, right? This is before the war on poverty. This is before Lyndon Baines Johnson. This is before really the civil rights movement has cohered even. And this is the most thoroughgoing, complete rejection of racial liberalism so far. Racial liberalism had been offered up right after World War II. Black people are going to learn to be just like us. That's Brown v. Board of Education. We get them into our schools. We train them to be like white people. That's what Brown v. Board of Education says. And in exchange, we'll give them all the rights, all the good stuff. They're also going to serve in our military after 1947, right? We desegregated the military. Oh, what a wonderful progressive thing. Oh, good. You get to go die in Korea and Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan for no reason at all, just like the white man. There's racial equality. So there's a big trade-off. You're going to assimilate into our culture, become just like us, which didn't work out entirely, by the way. Somewhat, but not entirely. But that was the deal. And we will give you civil rights. Oh, you're going to fight in our militaries and our endless imperial wars too, and not complain about it, and even be proud of it. When you go to fight in Vietnam, you're going to be proud of it. That's the other part of the deal. And yeah, you get all the good rights that the white people have got, which is not inconsiderable at all. And then later we'll give you affirmative action for this stuff. But so yeah, forgot where I went from there. But
he believes in his fiber that they will always hate him.
Right. And so he therefore it is a renunciation of what Martin Luther King called agape, which was the love of other men. I mean, the love of mankind. No, King, that was one thing he wasn't. He was never gay. Not at all. No, the love of mankind. So it's like this platonic idea. And of course, King, what he's doing is he is, white people could adopt that idea among themselves quite easily, and maybe black people could too, but like across the races is what King was saying it should be applied to. And what Podhoretz is saying in that essay is no, we fucking hate each other, yo. This is tribal. They're the Amaleks. Got it? You heard what Netanyahu said about the Palestinians recently. That's what Podhoretz is saying about the black people. And then at the very same time, what Podhoretz is doing in the 60s is he's turning, right when the Vietnam War is starting, toward American imperialism. And he starts supporting the Vietnam War, and then he starts supporting every war since. And more than that, he supports like a humongous American empire that's global, that controls everything and all the cultures of the world and all that rest of it. And so when that starts, he also embraces Israel big time, which he had never really cared about. But by the 60s, he's like, oh yeah, this is like a big deal. And oh, by the way, I'm really Jewish. And so he sees Israel as like the hub of the American empire in the Middle East. And he also has obvious emotional attachments to Israel. And who's attacking? The good little Jews of Israel. What the fuck? It's the same kind of people, damn near the same skin color as those Negroes in Brooklyn who are beating me up on the streets. Now, Podhoretz never said exactly what I just said, but the essay about the blacks in the streets and then his subsequent 5,000 essays about the need to bomb the shit out of Muslims and Arabs and brown people to protect Israel and the United States interest started the same exact time. I mean, I think it's not a stretch that they're at least connected emotionally for him. And so that's to me why the origins of the Iraq War can actually be found on the streets of Brooklyn in 1941. And you can also see this, it's not just Podhoretz. He's not the only Iraq War proponent of American imperialism who got really tough on the blacks too, against the liberals. The liberals had their own reasons to promote the empire. But the reason that people like John McCain and others did, and Podhoretz and the neocons, was similar to why they have no sympathy whatsoever for dead Gazan children right now, which is simply that they kind of think that those people are inferior. They're kind of sorry that that's true. I think, you know, they've kind of wished that they were equal, but they're just like, nope, they've given up on them. Like, they're just too damn dumb and violent. And what I'm saying is like blacks and Arabs in their minds. This includes Sam Harris. Like, these people just cannot get rid. They just cannot shake bad ideas, no matter how hard we try to educate them and go to war with them. You know, they just will not learn the proper way to behave in a civilized society. So it's just, you gotta just kill them. And so, yeah, I mean, so the connection between one's views of black people at home has been connected to one's views of the empire abroad. It's just that whether you hate blacks and are racist toward them, or you want to embrace them and make them your brother, you're for the American empire. You have different reasons for promoting it. When you're for the American empire, you think of blacks as your little brother who you're going to help, and you will be rewarded for helping. And God, what a wonderful image in every white liberal's mind, you know, being lifted up by a sea of black people, you know. Like, there's that image of some South African white activist who's doing, like, that's what's happening. And I always thought that's exactly what every white liberal wants. Lost my train. Sorry. Where were we?
So Daryl Cooper has another essay. Well, he points to another essay. It takes two to tango in this feud.
Oh, wait, let me finish that. Sorry. Yeah, whether you dislike black people and want the police to beat the crap out of them, or you think of them as as your brother and you want to save them, be their savior, you are in favor of the American empire. Because if you want to save them, right, it's all about extending our beneficence to the world, and you see the Palestinians as your friends. And so what they want to do is not just end the conflict in Israel, but then move right in and make sure, you know, we teach the Palestinians exactly what's what and who's right. And so it's the same kind of imperialist idea, right? We go into the ghetto, we make the blacks just like us. We go into Palestine, we make the browns just like us. So it's imperialist on either side. That's why we have an American empire. So sorry, Daryl Cooper.
Yeah. So he points on the black side, he points to an essay in 1967 in the New York Times by a fresh-faced Nobel Prize winning James Baldwin. And I believe it is called "Negroes Are Anti-Semitic Because They Are Also Anti-White."
Right.
And I think that's an important essay.
Yeah. Oh, well, wait, I think that's the essay that Podhoretz was responding to, as a matter of fact. Right. That's right. Yeah, so Podhoretz actually schooled Baldwin a little bit as to exactly why he hates blacks. Mm-hmm. He was really drilling down. I mean, again, you've got to admire that. Like, he
really got beat up.
What more do you want, man? He's like being so honest about his racism. Like, good Lord. Like, ever since then, we've been screamed at to be honest about our racism. Norman Podhoretz was the first white person in this country to be honest about their racism. Not just honest, he wrote like a 3,000 word essay explaining the ins and outs of his racism and exactly why he hates black people. And you punish him? I sure wish he hadn't been the architect of the Iraq War. You know, I'd be a big fan of Norman, like a real thorough, like full-throated fan. But he's made a few mistakes since that essay.
It's funny. I think Liam Neeson got in trouble for racism under like the same pretenses. Like, was his girlfriend who got killed or something? And he said, yeah, that's right.
Liam Neeson's girlfriend got raped by a black man, I think in London. Mm-hmm. And when she told Liam, this is according to Liam Neeson, Liam spent, I forget how many nights in a row. He every night for an extended period of time, he would go out roaming, hunting, he said, hunting for a black guy to attack, to kill in retaliation. Which, yeah, wow. Anyway, yeah.
Well, I don't know, man. I think the first step to getting past these feelings is to talk about them, right?
No, yeah. I'm just thinking about Liam Neeson for a second. Like, I'm trying to get into that head there. Boy, that's when you get into race and rape, oh boy. I mean, you want to talk about, which we have many times in this show, but it is so incredibly explosive, and it is so taboo. It's so hard to talk about without exploding something. But there is a lot that is just not said about that. And the statistics, I mean, Jesus Christ. Well, okay.
Stop keeping track of the statistics.
Exactly. The FBI stopped, was like 20 years ago, 15 or 20 years ago. They just stopped, and they don't even publish the old ones, the old statistics correlating race with rape. It was not a good look. We can say that. We remember, there's some screenshots, I suppose, of the stats before they started censoring it, but they stopped keeping it. They stopped keeping those records. I assume the raw data is out there, though. Someone could assemble it. But let's just say that it looks quite a bit like the murder statistics and race. And we can leave it there. So actually, I think worse. There's quite a bit of interracial rape, and it's almost all black on white. So, like, oh wow, right. Now that I remember it, it's 99% black on white. Yeah. So boy, that's there you go. Merry Christmas, everybody. And we'll be it's nice to have, finished the career of this show. Great working with you, Michael.
Yeah.
You've been a fantastic partner. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know how we got there. I mean, I guess we should always go there because it's the great unsaid thing. One of the great unsaid things in our society, and it is connected to so much else. It's not insignificant. It's not like some horror, but it's often some little corner that's politically insignificant. No, it's the nexus of American politics and has been since slavery. People, the great taboo. I mean, of course, during slavery, certainly after slavery, the birth of the Ku Klux Klan was in direct response, in large part, to alleged black atrocities against white women and black political power, but certainly both. And then it continues through the lynching phase of early segregation, right? All the lynchings was all about rape. It continues into the 20th century, but then racial liberalism comes along and says, wait, black people, hold on, guys. They're not animals. Can't treat them like that. And so anything statistical that rubs against that must be censored. And so our children are not taught it. They don't know. They don't know what happened in all those lynching cases. No one's ever stopped and said, hey, wait, what did that guy actually do? That's the most horrible thing you can imagine. There's a guy being hung from a tree. Like, how could that be a good thing? Well, actually, it was if he raped your sister or your mother, which in most of those cases is exactly what happened. Boy, it's funny how morality can flip on a dime.
Well, yeah, especially in the Me Too era where that was the worst offense imaginable.
No, like everybody should think about that for a second. Like, okay, think about if someone raped of any color, raped your mother, raped your wife, raped your daughter.
Well,
raped your daughter. Would you want him? How would you feel about him burning from a tree, being hung from a tree? You'd be cool with that shit. And so what I'm saying to you is go look, and everybody can go look. You can investigate all these cases, multiple reports from multiple angles, even from black newspapers often, by the way, because black newspapers at the time weren't woke, actually, and they were interested in disciplining their community to get civil rights. And so they were very interested in reporting on black crime, very honestly, as a matter of fact. And so if you read a black newspaper from the 1890s, often they'll be like, oh, no, this motherfucker's a rapist. Yeah. So I'm not saying in every single case, but I would put money on it that it was a big majority were true. And by the way, 1/3 of those cases of lynchings were of white men. 1/3 white men. were lynched. People don't talk about that either. These were rapists who weren't being punished because there wasn't an adequate state to deal with it, and because there wasn't any feminism yet. So,
and there wasn't an adequate state because it was war torn.
That too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there just weren't cops. There was no federal. The FBI didn't exist until 1913, and it only didn't really exist until the 30s as a force. You didn't have to be afraid of the FBI until the 1930s. There wasn't. You could go state to state killing people and get away with it. John Brown just like walked around killing people, all the way damn near coast to coast killing people, and was never stopped by a cop. And he was one of many who did that. That's why the gangsters got off so well until the 30s, when FDR squashed them and built the FBI. The other untold story of liberalism, it's all about the cops, man. FDR built the FBI. He's responsible for that thing. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was getting that a point of being anti-war is that when law and order dissolves post-war, what always fills a vacuum is some sort of vigilante justice. Like you've seen it in Ukraine a little bit. You've seen it just everywhere.
Vigilante justice, man. So, I wrote this book. It's called A Renegade History of the United States, in which I celebrate those who violated not just norms, but also laws, like the gangsters who, provided liquor during Prohibition. Like, they were awesome. They provided liquor. God damn it. Everybody loves that. They were pro-freedom in doing so. Great. Anti-state. Awesome. Fuck the cops. Fuck the police. They were the original. Yay. But they also killed people. And today, I wrote that book. So I wrote that book in the 2000s. That was before the decade that Jack Mason of the Perfume Nationalist says was the end of times. To him, that's when all things went to hell and we entered the neoliberal age. But it was also still a time in which modern post-war liberalism was dominant and stable. It was the regime, the establishment was stable as of, until the 2010s. So when I wrote the book, it was in the 2000s. And I kind of wrote a little bit of it in the 1990s too, but the 2000s, this is post-Clinton, good times, man. The economy is doing, actually, this is before, I wrote that book almost entirely before the recession too. That's the other thing. So it was a very stable time. Since the recession, we have lived in a different world. Oddly, 9/11 was not nearly as much did not change the culture nearly as much as the recession did, I think, because we bounced right back after about a year of anxiety. And I lived in New York City, so I know of what I speak. I lived in New York City at the time, commuted right under the World Trade Center in the subway every single day. So I know what I'm talking about. After about a year of being really nervous, we all kind of just got over it, and real estate prices went zooming right back up. I know this too, because I bought a place in 2001 in New York City. So, yeah. And so I wrote the book right then, kind of right post 9/11, pre-recession, and liberalism. And it kind of post 9/11, and in some ways it kind of showed itself to be so powerful, even though we had the war on terror and the war in Iraq happening. First of all, the unity around the war in Iraq, the unity around post 9/11, and also seeing liberals, all the liberals and even many lefties being a part of that new nationalism, it was like, oh shit, okay, this post-war American order, it's not going anywhere. This is a powerful fucking thing. Not to mention the military, which at that time, this is before Russia and China, and especially China, had built up their militaries to where they are now. The Chinese military is way bigger than it was in 2005 when I was writing Renegade History. You didn't have these serial panics, these serial hysterias starting on college campuses and then extending into the entire body politic and all through the media. That started a little bit later. Like, I don't know, like I would say in the 2010s. That's kind of Jack's thesis. He's right about that. You start to see like the college rape hysteria was 2012. The college race hysteria which was 2 years. People forget this now, but before the George Floyd thing and before all the Michael Brown and BLM stuff, there was like, or during the early BLM stuff, it was just like every college campus was shut down for like weeks at a time. Before that,
for scares, like fake hate crime scares. Like I saw lab equipment covered, and I thought that was a Klan hood.
Weekly,
yeah.
There were this is Wilfred Riley's bag. He wrote the book on this thing. Actually, 2 books. He is the guy on this. He's the expert in terms of the quantitative part of it. It's thousands of hoaxes in 2 years. Thousands just on American universities. Just in those schools, there were thousands of race hoaxes. So I wrote the book before all that. I wrote it before COVID. I wrote it before, which sheared off like half of liberalism. Half of liberals like became anti-establishment because of COVID. Yeah, I wrote it before the 2020 race meltdown, which also really disrupted liberalism. We got to come back to that because we got to talk about this amazing documentary on Minneapolis and George Floyd. And
sorry, is this you all apologizing for being a liberal 10 years ago? Is that what
no,
this boils down to?
No, I'm apologizing. No, I'm apologizing for being an anarchist 12 years ago. What I'm saying is that book is not apologizing, but I'm kind of I'm leaning there right now. I mean, if anybody read the book or knows anything about it, like it's basically a celebration of the lawbreakers, the norm breakers, the bad people, the agents of chaos to some extent, but now, but I'm saying that was written when liberalism and the establishment were super solid. Like the New York Times was not just an obvious propaganda rag then. Like even I read it at least, to glean information and to sort of get some decent analysis of certain things. Now it's just the DNC writes it basically. So that's why I felt very free to be a bomb thrower. I felt freer now to say like, fuck it, fuck the establishment, burn it down, let's start over. Whatever, or keep it off balance or be oppositional all the time. And I still hold those politics. I'm not a different guy, but boy, I also say on page 6 in that book that if I lived in a country like Haiti, in which there is rampant disorder and chaos,
and they idolize the bomb throwers, they glorify the people who broke the rules. Their entire existence is from those bomb throwers.
Exactly. I said, if I lived in a society like that, I wouldn't write a book like this. But this book is about America. And so far, I said in 2010, when the book was published, I said, so far in America, essentially, the establishment has been very, very stable and secure. And, the guardians of moral order have been very secure. And so it's fine to be a radical. In fact, it's good to be a radical in that kind of society we live in. But America has changed in the last 20 years. And it's become more different. It's become more difficult to be a cultural anarchist, which I think is actually what I really am. If I had to really identify my politics, I'm a cultural anarchist. That's what I care about. But so speaking of the new, not anarchism, but anarchy, which we now, I think, have in our society for the first time, the establishment, largely because of the digital age and the internet, has just been broken down. Just been like, feels like whole like wings of it have sheared off like glaciers, just into the water. Or are just deeply disturbed and troubled, destabilized place. Things like the New York Times as an institution, it doesn't mean at all what it meant 20 years ago. Not at all. I mean, that's a huge deal. The New York Times was the backbone of American formal culture. It is not anymore. Whoa. I mean, that's a big deal. So I know in watching this documentary done by like
Minneapolis,
called The Fall of Minneapolis, done by, as far as I can glean, sort of, I think they're sort of your standard Republican types, but quite sober, reasonable, thoughtful people, decent thinkers. Like it doesn't feel like a cheap piece of Fox propaganda, but I think their politics are probably somewhere around there. And one of them is an ex-cop, so you can understand what his investment is in this. The other was like, I think actually a local Fox reporter, former, like maybe anchor even for like, I think Minneapolis. Oh, that's what it is. I think she's a former Minneapolis Fox anchor. And he's an ex-cop. I don't know if he's Minneapolis, but ex-cop anyway. So they made the film.
CBS, not Fox.
Okay, right. So I mean, yeah, because they don't actually come off as very right wing at all. They don't come off as like Republican in that way, but they might be.
Yeah, the documentary is produced by a conservative outlet, Alpha News.
Oh, whatever that means. Yeah, whatever conservative means. I mean, I've never heard of them. So
there's a lot of these local news type people who have their own personal opinions and kind of get a broader platform by picking up a beat. And
I've personally known many of them. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people in the podcasting space are that. Actually, they're people who had, and me to some extent. I mean, when I wrote Renegade History, or right after I wrote Renegade History, the next thing I did was not podcasting. It was writing lots and lots of op-eds, basically opinion pieces and like historical commentary for various establishment, basically websites, what became establishment, like Salon and Slate and all those. And Daily Beast, I was basically a regular at the Daily Beast for about 2 years, wrote a bunch of pieces there. I think I was weekly there, or monthly, maybe monthly. But anyway, for a long time. I would never, ever write for any of those places now, and they would never, ever hire me. Things have completely changed. The walls have now grown also between what I'm calling the establishment, the legacy media, and anarchy, which is the podcasting world, the rest of media, and all the politics that's around us on this side in the media. We have our own politics now. Like we have our own damn candidates. We have fucking he's not mine, but I'm saying like the dissident side basically, unfortunately, has RFK. I think he's not. I think he's a fake dissident, but I think
Vivek, if you want to, I think
Vivek to some extent, right? I mean, he's certainly our guy. Our side likes him, or at least parts of our side likes him.
And he shows up on our podcasts.
I should say this. This is it. They are completely rejected by the establishment, and a part of the dissident wing likes them. That's it. But that's what makes them dissident, is that the establishment is like unified. Even their families have disowned them. Well, at least Kennedy's family has entirely disowned him on this.
Well, this is a constituency that's being courted, and there's clear lines in the sand.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about, so one of the things that changed radically in my politics because of this change in America, in American society, since 2010, since I wrote that book, is my view on, which was probably number 2 in terms of things that were like closely held for me, in terms of what I felt most powerfully about. My views on, I guess I would say, race and crime, race and criminal justice. So this again was the time when, mass incarceration was also like what everybody was talking about and everybody cared about. And then we had Mike Brown. Then we had Trayvon Martin. And my God, I was moved. Like most people, was just sure that Zimmerman shot that boy in cold blood, that racist fucker, and he should go to prison forever. It's amazing to think that that was in my mind then, and it makes me just hope to God I am never on trial before a jury of my peers. And then Mike Brown followed a couple of years later, I think. And I wanted at that point to kill cops. And in fact, I think you can probably see it on my old Facebook posts from back then. After Ferguson, I was I'm pretty sure, I was posting stuff threatening to kill cops, essentially. I wasn't the only one. That's the only thing I can say in my defense. And it just seemed, this is when videos were new in the way that they are now. Like it wasn't, YouTube was around, of course, before then, but they weren't. I think maybe Twitter was it. They hadn't. You couldn't see videos on Twitter until then, or something like that. There was something very, very new in social media that coincided with Ferguson, so that it became sort of one of the first all social media political events, and that's a huge part of it. And so the videos, all of a sudden, because of smartphones and everybody having a smartphone by the mid 2010s, which is probably a big part of neoliberalism. I think we should take that into account, for better and worse. By the mid 2010s, everyone has a smartphone. Every dude living in the hood has a smartphone with a high res camera on it. And so we start seeing videos of black guys getting shot by the cops. And I can remember still vividly several of them that, actually gray areas. I don't know. Yeah, the more I think about it, I saw very few, if any, that were clear cut, actually bad shootings, unfortunately. But at the time, of course, I just thought, oh my God. Oh my God. And I remember thinking, even this is around 2015. And you can go look it up on my Facebook page if you want. I'm not gonna hide from it. I remember even talking seriously for a while with people publicly about the infiltration of police departments by white supremacist organizations. Like me in 2015, that's where on that issue, that's where my mind was. And I thought they were hunting black men. Straight up. They were hunting black men. Now that was the view of every single person on the left. And it was the view of 3/4 of libertarians, at least. And among libertarians, I'd say about half of libertarians are more hardcore haters of cops than any left-winger communist you'll ever meet. I mean, if you guys know anything about the libertarian world, boy, there are people there who hate, they don't talk about killing cops, but they hate cops badly. Like the intellectual leaders hate cops, make no bones about it.
Well, so I'm thinking about Scott Horton's, his personal Norman Podhoretz story is the cops shutting down his favorite skate park when he was a teenager.
Oh, wow. Right. Right. Perfect. Yeah. Well, Scott's deceased friend, Will Grigg, I think it is. Will Grigg. My God. I mean, he was like an anarcho-capitalist libertarian who wrote screeds about his hatred of the cops. I mean, quite semi-violent screeds. Actually, no, he did threaten to kill cops. Not sort of gratuitously, but he threatened to like drop them, if they ever approached his house and stuff like that. So, in the world that was the left libertarian worlds is kind of where I was then. It's kind of in between those two worlds, it's who I hung out with, those two worlds. We all were just freaking out about the cops then. I mean, there was no one who was like saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe they're not hunting black men. But it was actually, once again, I'll say Camille Foster, he was the first one to say, hey, wait, maybe, and he said it just like this too, maybe they're not hunting black men. And I was like, what the fuck? And then once Camille like just sort of turned me in that direction, and I started looking, I was, oh boy, what am I going to do now? Because so much of my identity, really, at least my political identity, but really my emotional identity, I really felt this stuff, man, like was about police brutality, like as being like the last vestige of Jim Crow, the last vestige of American racist violence. I mean, I understood still, and I remember saying at the time, if I were a cop in the hood, I'd probably do brutality too. But I also just thought that whatever. We don't have to rehash all that politics of that. But I just saying where I was very anti-cop. I remember calling for not defunding the police, but for establishing. I remember I was going to do. Did I do a show on this? I was going to do a show on alternative policing models, like community policing. Dale Brown in Detroit is the guy who does that.
Is he the guy who does the cringe How to Survive a Lethal Scenario videos.
And he ended up doing the cringe How to Survive Lethal Scenarios videos. And I'm so glad. So in other words, another, another more evidence that there was a bit of a wrong turn on my part back then in the mid 2010s. Amid all this shit, I can't tell you exactly when I turned, but somewhere right around, it's like I only had the mania for 2 years. I think around 2017. Yeah, because I wrote an extensive piece in Reason, I think in 2017, right around then, doing the whole history of policing and how it is no longer racist, and just a thoroughgoing debunking of all the thinking I had just been doing previously. But so George Floyd, the people with my politics, meaning like left-wing and right-wing anarchist types, we have thought about the last 150 years of American history as, in large part, a war between the modern American state and citizens and its citizens. And that war has been, to people with my politics, has been largely carried out by the police. Domestically, I mean, of course, the army has done that elsewhere, but domestically, there's been a war. I mean, that's how we think of it. There's been an extraction of wealth, I mean, right? Taxation, holy shit. People take it from you. The cops basically take it from you every year. During war, they have taken your sons from you and thrown them into a meat grinder, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, so it's about 150 years, meaning there's 150 years of modern policing in this country. As I said, John Brown got away with murder literally all over the place, but not since the progressive era. So it's about 150 years. There's been modern policing. You can't get away with shit. The FBI was started in 1913. So anyway, what happened as a consequence of the George Floyd video, basically, which is really what it's all about, just that one video during the rioting in Minneapolis that followed. I think it was on day 3 of the rioting, maybe day 4. The mayor of the city of Minneapolis, before there was a sustained attack on it, ordered the 3rd precinct of the police department, the 3rd precinct station, to evacuate and to give over the precinct station to the mob. And there were cops running because they didn't have enough cars to drive everybody away. There's videos of cops running down the street away from the precinct station while some of the mob is chasing them. So in the movie, and I didn't check this, but I guess it's right, they say this is the first time in American history that a police precinct has been surrendered in a riot. So now we know the rest of what happened in Minneapolis and in basically every other city in this country. And even I think I know like hardcore people on the left still defend it, still think some of it was good, but I think that's a pretty small group. I think the vast majority of people look on that as not a good thing or as a horrendous thing. I look on it as a straight up horrendous thing with absolutely zero reason. In fact, in large part because Derek Chauvin did not kill George Floyd. Not even close. He is not even close to being guilty. But we saw anarchy, chaos, lawlessness, police backing away from riots, giving over their police precincts to the riots, to the mob. And how many dozens of people were killed just for fun, basically sadistic fun. But it was the moment when it was cool to hit a white person in the side of the head with a brick on the street. I saw that. How many videos of that did I see? Like lethally sucker punching white people on the street.
Well, and then cops running over white people, running over protesters.
Yeah. So, in that moment, I was not feeling very renegade. I was feeling like we were more living in Haiti. And so, I kind of wanted to not defund the police so much. And I kind of wanted to, like, hold off on like establishing community police groups. Let's like maybe just have regular police and train them differently, put new limits on them and rules on them. But then I started looking at statistics. Well, I mean, I looked at them years ago, but like the idea that they're hunting black men on the streets is so opposite of what's true. They are protecting black men on the streets from death. There are so many black men right now in America who would be dead if the cops acted differently. They are incredibly tolerant of violent behavior, and George Floyd is one example. There's the body cam footage is like what, about half an hour before Chauvin puts his knee on his neck or his shoulder. And during that time, I mean, Floyd is like very pathetic, and he's just sort of panicking from an OD, clearly, of fentanyl and meth and morphine. He had a lethal dose of fentanyl in him, and he had a major dose of meth in him simultaneously, with a dose of morphine on top of all that, with cardiac issues, heart disease. I think he had respiratory issues, like documented before this. He was sick. It's just, I mean, I knew this when I saw this toxicology when it came out that year in 2020. I was like, oh no, he died of that. Because I looked at it, the knee is on his shoulder blade. If you look at that, it's like, no, you wouldn't actually choke from that. Also, he was saying, I can't breathe over and over again before they put him in the squad car, when they put him in the squad car, when he was sitting in the squad car, when he was standing up outside. I can't breathe. I can't, before any of this, before the knee was on his neck at all. I mean, he was lying from the get-go. Chauvin was an asshole. Chauvin walks up to him, starts cursing at him. Fuck this. Get your hand on the fucking wheel. What the fuck's wrong with you? Like that. And George Floyd is just being pathetic because he's completely out of his mind on drugs. Pathetic and whimpering and begging for whatever and lying, constantly lying. The most damning, and this is the reason to see this movie. The thing I did not know. Wow. Well, Derek Chauvin was just stabbed 22 times in prison.
Yeah.
And just before this movie came out. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think the popularizing of the slogan, I can't breathe, from the Michael Brown case in the Ferguson years, do you think that has extended black life in altercations with the police?
That was Eric Garner.
Well, that too, yeah. Oh, Hands Up, Don't Shoot was Michael Brown. That's right.
Yep.
Eric Gardner was I Can't Breathe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the popularizing of that as a slogan, like that's immediately in your head to shout that even before anything happens.
Oh yeah. And people, it's amazing how we can forget. Even I sort of forget the mood. Remember the mood just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago about all that? Remember Colin Kaepernick and taking a knee in the NFL, and just on all the website, every corporate website had BLM on it. And like, wow, all a fraud. So get this, everybody. The Minneapolis Police Department training manual that was given to Derek Chauvin contains instructions on how to deal with chaotic, non-responsive suspects like George Floyd. And in it, they describe the technique to use and then have a drawing of it. The drawing is of an officer with his knee on the upper shoulder blade just below the neck of the suspect on the street. It is identical to what Derek Chauvin is doing to George Floyd. It is an identical picture. He is doing exactly what he was trained to do. On top of that, the film shows that the Minneapolis Police Department, in its training sessions, used a PowerPoint, which included a video, I think it's a photograph demonstrating the technique once again. The photograph using that technique in that PowerPoint to train Minneapolis police officers, again, looks exactly like what Derek Chauvin was doing to George Floyd. And then, I didn't know this either, during the trial, the chief of police of the Minneapolis Police Department gets up on the stand and testifies that no, officers are not trained to do what Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd. That is not part of their training. Straight up lies. Straight up lies. And that was the end of it. That's what put Chauvin away. He had no defense anymore. And that's why he's in prison. That's why he got stabbed 22 times. It's amazing he's alive. He's an asshole. I'm pretty sure. I do not like the guy. When I first saw that video, the thing I thought was not so much, oh, he killed Floyd. It was like, what an asshole. Just, you don't have to treat him this way. I mean, from the beginning. And Floyd was never being belligerent or hostile or any of that stuff. He was just being pathetic. I mean, it was just very sad. But the idea that everything we've gone through just since June 2020, I mean, it certainly predates all this, but the George Floyd version of the ongoing racial hysteria that is American life, the 3.5 years now, the ways in which it changed our culture, our lives, so many people's lives, directly killed some people, changed the way we hire and fire people, changed education again, just ruined race relations in so many ways. That was all 100% built on a lie. I mean, it's complete fraud. And I knew it at the time. I remember when it first happened. I remember summer of 2020 doing a show, doing Unregistered Live on a Thursday night. And I remember saying to like my patrons, I don't know. I think he died of a fentanyl overdose and people were not happy with me. People who like listened to the show were not cool with it. In fact, I think I was the only person there that night who thought that Chauvin did not kill him. So, I've from the beginning, I just, and so I'm not defending by doing this modern policing, or even Derek Chauvin or police departments or the state. But if you're gonna be an anti-statist, you got to at least be honest about what the state is and what it does. And also you got to get all this racial mumbo jumbo out of your mind, because it's clouding the way you assess things, because people just judged it through that. If he were white, if George Floyd were white, I don't think any of this would have happened.
Well, his victimhood wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, if it were exactly the same case, same exact person, but he were white and in a white neighborhood, no one would care.
There's no soap opera there.
No one would care. And there would have been no riots, and there would be no, like BLM memorials on every corporate website and whatever. So yeah.
I was going to talk about things that have changed drastically over the last 10 years, and a lot of people are reconsidering. Oh, we got a super chat in. Thank you, Handyman, for the 2. He said, gun control kept the riots going, not anarchy. Yeah, that was the anarcho-tyranny sort of hypothesis, that people who actually defended themselves during the riots were the ones being prosecuted, and the people who were doing property damage without guns were the ones being allowed to commit crimes.
Yeah, then there was the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
Yeah.
So we were 1 for 2. Not we. Derek Chauvin is not a we, but Kyle Rittenhouse, even though I really don't like him either, just in terms of his personality. I mean, boy, I one of the rare occasions when I really celebrate something that happens in the news. When they acquitted him, I mean, that was just the fact that he was a kid. Also, I just couldn't tolerate that. Like I remember saying at the time, I said, if they put him in prison, I will go to Wisconsin and protest because I can't do that. I can't allow that. That's too much. So what Kyle Rittenhouse was trying to do, he obviously didn't succeed. I mean, I should say, as a strategy, I would say as a strategy beyond anything other than protecting your business in downtown Kenosha, what Rittenhouse was doing was nonsensical. I don't think he was going to accomplish anything other than maybe protect a single business. Although I guess that's what he was there for, wasn't it? That's right. He was called in by a friend. That's right. So I take it all back. Okay. But anyway, I mean, some people did. I guess what I'm doing is actually going after what's an anarcho handyman down there. Sounds like he's sort of politicizing it beyond what Kyle Rittenhouse might have been doing. I don't know. As a political strategy, dudes with rifles.
Mm-hmm. Well, for example, the McCloskeys, if you remember them, were they Ferguson? Where were they? But the McCloskeys, a mob of Black Lives Matters protests break into a gated community, start walking past their house.
Oh, yeah.
They show up with their handgun.
St. Louis.
Yep.
St. Louis.
St. Louis, very poor trigger discipline. This the George Floyd riots, but they were happening in St. Louis. I think that's what it was.
Basically, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they defended their home, but they were being prosecuted to the full extent of the law for brandishing a weapon, while the people trespassing and vandalizing weren't prosecuted at all.
Oh, I mean, okay, sure. I mean, in terms of defending one's own property and life, sure, please, by all means, own a gun, wear it, carry it, have many. Please know how to use it extremely well and be extremely safe with it. And if you are, then I think you should totally do that. No, I mean, just if there's anything, but that's the extent of it, though. Now, that in itself is extremely political, if that's what he means. Like, that keeps the state from having any purpose, right? If each person is strapped and thereby able to defend themselves and their property, there's no reason for a state. The state's primary and perhaps only purpose is to defend property and life and property, right? And if we can do it ourselves, then it obviates the need for the state. Is that what Handyman is suggesting? If so, then right on, brother.
No money behind this, but Sean Cosgrove said Tony Timpa in Dallas was very similar. So yeah, we don't have to speculate if there was a white George Floyd or not. The white George Floyd was Tony Timpa, and nobody knows his name.
They stomped the shit out of Tony Timpa. They were kicking him, stomping him, and I think hit him with batons too. Tony Timpa, and then we have a picture of Tony Timpa's face at the end of it. It's a fucking eggplant you smashed on the sidewalk. I mean, they beat the shit out of him. Excuse me, what did they do to George Floyd? I mean, not even close. Not even anything. I mean, what they did to George Floyd was essentially nothing but humiliating. And that's actually why what happened is that it was humiliating. And that is what pissed me off about the video. It seemed to me like Chauvin was sort of interested in humiliating him, or at least didn't care about humiliating him. And I think that's why people went crazy. And I understand that part of it. I think Chauvin's an asshole. I'm pretty sure of that. And I would not want him to be a cop on my case. Even if I'm, the good guy in the case, I wouldn't want him involved in it. I don't like the guy. He seems like sort of your typical thuggish, sadistic cop. But unfortunately, he was doing exactly what he was trying to do. So if you have a problem with this, take it up with the Minneapolis Police Department. Oh, guess who the commissioner of the Minneapolis Police Department is? A black guy. Oh, well, this gets complicated, doesn't it now? Turns out it's his fault. Not only that, he lied to protect himself in the trial, sent Derek Chauvin to prison to get stabbed 22 times while he was lying to protect himself. Woo! But he's black. My God, that guy. the thing, I mean, if anybody should be scared about this film, it's that guy, the Minneapolis police chief. I mean, he is clearly guilty of a colossal crime of multiple dimensions. He should go to, I mean, Jesus, he should go to prison forever, really, or at least for a very long time. But I think according to the law, the laws he broke there, I mean, that's a life away, what he did, if it's true. I mean, I need to see the actual documents, but I can't imagine they invented them in that way. And they had multiple cops, by the way, from Minneapolis testify on film in the video that yes, this was part of their training, and every single one of them was trained to do this. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. They had multiple cops on camera saying, yes, I was trained to do this.
The judge wouldn't allow the admission of the training manual as evidence either in the case.
Exactly. Right. And high corruption. And I just remember being, there, and I mean, being in America in the summer of 2020, and just, when was the trial? I don't know, but I guess it was like a year later. But just, I mean, that the atmosphere persisted. It didn't matter for at least 2 years, right? I feel we were in sort of a fever of racial hysteria, which was like overlapping with the groomer hysteria. It was kind of like we had hysterias on the left and the right overlapping, which was super fun.
It was a small cultural revolution. Like, major institutions talk about like post 2020, not only as post COVID, but post this racial awakening and restructuring of everything. Diversity, equity, inclusion hires went way up, both in terms of affirmative action, but in terms of bureaucratic positions to be filled and race grifters to be institutionalized into every university, every corporation.
Yeah. It's been a great time to be a Black actor.
You can play Isaac Newton.
Yeah, you can play anything you want these days, which is good. I'm for that. But 2020 even has a name. It's called the racial reckoning. It's damn near trademarked. I mean, that's what people refer to it. It has a name, a title. That's how big it was. And it was all based on a lie and a fraud. We haven't even gotten into other parts about the George Floyd story. We don't need to talk about his history, but, it is significant that he was, basically a career criminal. It's not definitive in any way, but it's just sort of wild that the ways in which he's been lionized. And then we are reminded in the film of the just stunning line from Nancy Pelosi. Thank you, George Floyd, for giving your life to this cause. Thank you for giving your life, George Floyd, to this. Imagine Nancy Pelosi saying that about you when you're in the grave. And while cities are burning. The left, the left line on this stuff is that the cities didn't burn, and that the right wing is just being hysterical about this, that it really wasn't such a big deal, that the riots weren't such a big deal. But at the same time, they were saying these riots are great. We need rebellion and uprisings against racial injustice, because they do.
That's the second part of the gaslighting of 2020. The first part of the gaslighting is that nobody actually cared about the virus. You just stayed home for a week. No, there were no actual laws and implications, and society didn't completely transform over the virus. And then the second gaslighting is they were mostly peaceful. It was just, it was a good reason to go outside. They didn't completely suspend science for it. They didn't say that protests are different kinds of dangerous depending on what you're protesting for.
That moment in June of 2020, when they issued that statement that protesting in mass numbers outdoors together in close quarters was fine because racism was a greater threat than COVID. At the height of the COVID hysteria, so we had multiple hysterias right then. Man, since the Salem witch trials, we have been a country of hysterias, but none Never more so than in the last 20 years, and never more so than the last 3 years. But that moment when one hysteria trumped the other, when we were like, race is even more important than COVID. The death count on the TV screen all day long, every day, the millions dead thing of COVID, that's actually less important to you people than race stuff, than Black people allegedly being killed needlessly by the police. Yeah, okay. So, but that was just really stupendous. Yeah, and then of course, science. Oh, except when there's race involved. When Black people are involved, Michael, like science is actually an interesting concept, though it doesn't actually have any rules to it. But when it comes to public health authorities,
well, it's a tool to further egalitarianism. Science is
right,
a tool to further egalitarianism. Yeah,
right. Except when it's not. Yeah, no, they're definitely confused about science.
if it
Yeah,
doesn't work, it's pseudoscience.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen. Of course, I've never seen like any kind of liberal defend that moment. I want to see someone like now, like look back, show them the video, show them the ruling, the statements, and be like, okay, now, please tell me why that would make sense to you.
They just gaslight you into saying it never happened.
It's because the fear of being called a racist trumps everything. Even we now know that it trumps even being called a right-wing conspiracy theory nut, anti-vaxxer. What are COVID people? The anti-COVID people, right? It's even worse than that stuff. It trumps everything except for pedophile, which is why the right wing invented pedophile as an epithet, because the other things weren't working. Anyway.
Okay. We got to talk about Yeezy season.
Yeah.
In light of things from 2013 that might have a different light in 2023. I want to talk about the Klan hood, the quote unquote Klan hood that Ye was apparently wearing at his rave in Miami.
Okay, wait. So hold on. Now this is going to serve dual duty as a reaction video.
Yes.
This show, because you don't
listen to hip hop, so I don't expect you to know this.
Well, I mean, you sent me the thing earlier today, and I knew we were going to do something about Kanye, but I have not looked into it. I haven't followed him recently at all. I don't know what brother's been doing. This is all fresh to me, so hit me with it.
Okay. All right. So let me preface this. He does a listening party all throughout the listening party, premiering tracks from his new album that aren't cleared yet. He has this thing that looks like a hoodie, and he's playing with it. At one point in time, it looks like a Palestinian shawl. Another time, he covers his face. Maybe he's from Antifa. Another time, he wears it over his head. Maybe he's the Virgin Mary. Maybe he wears it like a shawl. Maybe he's a rabbi. I don't know. But at the climax, where he plays the one song that's released, Vultures, and the whole crowd is rapping his verse, this is what his headwear transforms into. And this is an image for anybody who knows this. Kanye had a song in 2013 called Black Skinhead. Man. He debuted that song on Saturday Night Live with a music video with the exact same imagery, and it was totally acceptable 10 years ago. And for some reason, right now, it's not. And he knows this, and he knows that it's only going to get tabloid attention. And it's only going to get him more siloed into alternative media space.
Why does that crack me up so much? There's something just very, very funny and comical about that.
I mean, I think I want to do a course about the Ku Klux Klan, but
okay.
I think the Klan originally stole their hoods from from Afro-Caribbean, Afro-American.
Really?
Carnival, yeah. Carnival decorations, secret societies. Little mystical things from the South that were floating around. And they're part of the great unknown of the Black South. And I think that white people initially stole their hoods from Black people in their attempt to portray themselves as ghosts and oppress them. If you look at early Ku Klux reports, some of the attacks were even in blackface. Some of the
So,
attacks were even in drag.
man, can you let white people create anything in
Okay.
history? We can't even have the Ku Klux Klan anymore.
Yeah.
You get the black people have to create that too.
I think he's reclaiming this as a symbol, not of fear, but as a symbol of striking fear into others.
Talking about like our cultural heritage. You know, my family, my grandmother's big ass redneck family from like downstate Illinois and North Carolina, but downstate Illinois was like a hub of the Klan, like where you are, Indiana. That area was like where the Klan, and she had a huge family, multiple generations, all white as shit. I am sure that I am descended from a Klansman, so you know, we're talking about my heritage here, and I want to say white people have agency. And they created it. Okay, we might have here and there. Wait a minute. We might have learned about this or that little like voodoo technique, you know, from the blacks that maybe, you know, went into the embroidery on our robes or whatever. But listen, you can't say that like the whole idea of the Klan is theirs, can you? I mean, please.
No, I'm saying that the elaborate costumes that were used to scare ex-slaves were stolen from their culture.
The shit that made us look good, you mean?
Yes.
That made us scary. We got that from the blacks.
We stole. We.
Now it's we.
Yeah. Okay. But here's how art works, okay? What you saw was an image, right? Here's what that image also evoked in my head. Another very strong image, much like the George Floyd video.
Oh, God. Well, no, right. Okay, so let's go back.
Uncanny how similar they look, right?
That's crazy. Yeah, I had a third image, which I actually didn't think Klan first, and I didn't think Abu Ghraib first either. First thing I thought was executioner.
Yeah, like a Middle East executioner. Yeah,
or medieval.
Medieval, yeah.
Yeah, Middle Ages. Yeah,
Middle Ages.
Something middle.
Yeah,
some middling executioner. But no, I like the Klan thing. That's a way better story.
Well, that's the only thing that the tabloids ran with. And here we have three completely ambiguous interpretations of the artistic thing that he was going for.
Right.
The tabloids, who dominate the discourse, will only report one, and that's the history that the mainstream is being told.
I'm still kind of mad about black cultural appropriation of my culture. You know, I mean, let's listen. The stock story is that rock and roll and jazz are black creations. Okay. There's an argument there. But in both cases, there's a whole lot of white people from the very, very beginning. I mean, your people, the Itals in New Orleans, we never talked about this.
Yeah, they were the first. I mean, to hire. Armstrong. They were.
Oh no, more than that. No, they were players. No, they were players.
First recorded players. They were in those bands. Everybody else, yeah.
I mean, did an Italian dude pick up a horn before Kid Ory did? I don't know, but like certainly right after. I mean, like right at it's pretty much the same time. These Sicilian. Although, are you Sicilian?
I'm close.
Okay.
I'm more. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I mean, the Sicilians in New Orleans in the 1880s and 90s were co-creating that thing. The very first recorded jazz music is Nick LaRocca's Tiger Rag, 1917, an all-Italian band. Sicilian, really.
I think it's a barnyard animal thing. I think it's a different name, but I know which record you're talking about.
What, Tiger Rag?
I don't think it's Tiger Rag. I think
that is. Yes, it is. 1917.
First,
Nick LaRocca.
There's another one that I think. Library Stable Blues. That's the one that I'm taught is the first one.
Tiger Rag.
Okay.
1917. I'm 90% sure. Anybody can check this very quickly. Nick LaRocca, New Orleans. all Sicilian American band.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the club owners, as you mentioned earlier, that's the stuff. A lot of the stuff is in my book, by the way, in Renegade History. But yeah, a lot of all of the original jazz club owners were Sicilian too. So they were the first to pay the musicians, the black musicians, and Louis Armstrong and company. Course on the KKK, good idea.
Yeah, I mean
it'll be part of White Heritage Month.
White Heritage Month, man.
White History Month. which we will make sure. What's the longest month again? Which one is that? We're gonna get that. Because you know how the blacks, we gave them the shortest month, and they didn't even notice for years. And then they got pissed off like too late. I was like, really, guys, come on. You could have been on it at the time. Like, was there a peep of protest? They were like so grateful to get a month. They didn't even notice we gave them the shittiest month.
Well, yeah, I think it's because of Frederick Douglass's birthday, but also I think it's because of Abraham Lincoln's birthday as well. It's like we're gonna take credit for it, so you get Abraham Lincoln's month.
Right. Yeah. Like, is Abraham Lincoln black? I don't think so. Also, Abraham Lincoln wanted to send the blacks back to Africa, and had other unsavory thoughts about them. So
he would have accepted a plan to extend slavery up and through the 1920s. Hypothetically, that was on the table.
He would have accepted slavery for the rest of his life if it had meant the he said this, if it had meant the integrity of the Union. If the Union had stayed together under his control, most importantly, under the control of DC, he really cared about that. DC federal control. If it, he would have been fine with slavery. Sure. He said it. No doubt about it.
One more reason why I think the Kanye story is relevant. Kanye is getting into our business. And if you go to use.news, which is part of Yeezy.com, he has his own newsletter that updates just randomly or sporadically whenever he wants it to.
What?
And he has his own series of headlines, which have an accompanied classical or romantic painting.
Yeezy pods, available now at Yeezy.com.
And here's what he wants you to know. Russia and Iran are ditching the United States dollar. There's something called BRICS. For some reason, Kanye wants us to know about that before he makes his first album completely independent of Def Jam Records.
I remember. So I remember when Kanye first came out as Based.
Introducing Yeezy pods.
The MAGA hat, is that what you're calling it? Or?
Yeah, 2016, I guess. And there was instantly a rush. I was even kind of a part of it a little bit. A rush among every public intellectual on the right who is at all cool, who had ever listened to hip hop ever. Like, it was like a Kanye rush. Like, everyone just rushed at the guy trying to get his attention, saying, "Hey, look over here, Kanye. Listen, can I be your mentor, please, please, please?" I mean, a couple of friends of mine were vying for that job. There was a moment when a couple of people suggested it to me. I'm like, I don't think so. And then Candace Owens won, and then she got burned.
And then it was Milo,
and then Nick Fuentes, and then finally
and Owen Benjamin.
Oh, now he's with Owen?
Well, he was with Owen. He was with Owen to call out Dave Chappelle for stealing some of his bits, but he was with Owen also to learn how to survive cancellation. But yeah.
Kanye is dead and buried now, isn't he? Like, within entertainment, in terms of
not in terms of musicians, like in terms of Charlie Wilson, in terms of Chris Brown, in terms of Ty Dolla $ign. No, in terms of TMZ, in terms of Def Jam Records, he's completely gone.
Yeah.
But in terms of people who make music, like, everybody wants to work with them still.
Still? Really?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess. It's funny. The problem with Kanye for me is I only like a few of his tracks. I'm not like a huge fan. Maybe half a dozen I like a lot, which is good. I mean, like above average, but like I'm not passionate about him. God, I was listening to a 90s hip hop list last night. I just can't believe you kids, what you did to our music. I don't understand. Anyway. All right, man.
You listen to Freddie Gibbs?
What?
You listen to Freddie Gibbs?
I have. Tell me again.
He's from Gary, Indiana. Hoosier, but Michael Jackson country. He's got a lot of just really hard bars. If you want bars and if you want gangster rap, he's like the last guy doing it. Crazy flipped soul samples and trap beats.
He's current.
Oh yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
Great.
Freddie Gibbs, cool.
Freddie Gibbs.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm on it, man. Thank you for that. Always looking for music recommendations. All right, let's go to the other side, as we used to call it. The Unregistered Live hangout meeting on Zoom with me and Michael after Unreported every Thursday begins in 1 minute, basically. If you want to join us, go to patreon.com/unregistered right there. And there's a link you can click and come on over to the Zoom room and hang out with me for an hour and a half, usually. Not always, but usually on Thursday night. So do it. Check it out. Join at any level. And it's all good. And then, next week or two, look for new courses, new unregistered podcast episodes. Got a lot of content we're gearing up for soon. And then I'll make a little pre-announcement. The Icarus Festival returns in June of 2024, Icarus 2. And we just got 2 humongous speakers for Icarus. One of whom we didn't expect to get. We're extremely happy to get this person, and it's going to be a huge thing. So we're very, very excited about Icarus Festival this coming year. So watch for that. We'll be making an announcement soon. And go to Unregistered Academy and look at all the courses. We're adding courses. The course for the Quran will be posted shortly. And lots of stuff on there. Israel, Palestine, Ukraine war, World War II. So unregisteredacademy.com. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
And
I'm going to play you out with the TikTok you did from the Henry Bingman interview.
Oh, cool. And I just did a great interview with Henry Bingaman on his podcast, which is called Practical Liberty. And it was awesome. Yeah, I love that interview. Henry's the best. Yeah, thank you. Peace.
Sweet. Yeah, see you out there. Peace.
The Quakers, what they did to their school children to discipline them was not to hit them, but to hang them in sacks from the ceiling for the whole day. Read the biography of any great American of the 19th century. They will tell you about getting their whipped on the daily with sticks, with leather belts, with branches, with whole limbs of trees, with planks, with metal rods. John Rockefeller, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, name an American, a great American, and they got their kicked by a